Hey everybody, it's Sharon here, and we are going to talk about baking a frozen pie. So when I am making pies, it makes a mess, right? Because I make homemade pie crust. Pie crust and I had this love-hate relationship for a long time. I loved it and I could never make it right. I finally figured out a recipe that I love. And so I'm tending to make pies a little bit more often. But I still don't like to make the mess. You know, you get flour all over. It just makes a mess. It's just part of having a homemade pie crust. So what I do is I make two. I put one in the freezer and one I bake that day. So the trick is when you're taking your pie crust out of the freezer to bake, there's a couple things you want to remember. One, do not thaw the pie out first before you bake it. It has to go into the oven frozen. If you bake it if you thaw it out first and then try to bake it, you're going to end up with soggy crust, and nobody likes soggy crust. So what you want to do is you turn your oven on, preheat it to 450. When it's at 450, that's when you take your pie out of the freezer. Okay, I freeze my pies right in the dish. You might want to line your dish, make your pie in there, and then freeze it, take it out, and then pull the pie out of the dish to freeze. Rewrap it and refreeze it. That way you have your dish available, and then you can just unwrap it and put it back in the dish. But it's easy for me. I have an extra plate, and I just put the whole thing in the freezer. Cover it with foil, put it into a 450 oven frozen. Do not thaw it out. So let me stick this in my oven here. Set my timer. I can hit the buttons right. Okay, so that's going to bake for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and turn the temperature down to about 375, which is a more normal pie cooking temperature, and let it bake for another 15 minutes. At that point, I'm going to take the foil off, leave the temperature the same, and I'm going to finish baking it. So it might take anywhere from 45 to 50 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. This depends on your pie. How big it is, because you know you've got big pans and little pans. So when the pie is bubbly and the crust is just this golden brown, that's when it's done. Now watch your crusts, and this is for any pie baking. Sometimes the crust will tend to want to brown too much before the middle is really done. And so towards the end of the baking, if you have one of those pie rings, I happen to have one right here, throw this onto the pie like for the last 10 minutes or so, and that kind of protects that crust from getting too browned. You can also just take strips of foil and put it around your pie. That's what I did for years before I got one of these. And so that works too. But whatever you do, do not thaw that pie out first, because you're going to ruin your crust. It's probably still edible, but your crust will be soggy, and nobody likes soggy crust. So I hope that was helpful. Remember, it doesn't have to be hard, and we are going to have peach pie this afternoon, and I don't have to make any mess in my kitchen. I already made it earlier. We'll talk to you later. Have a great day.